Mm. Welcome to the Special Olympics Women in Sport webinar series powered by Aerie. Thank you to our incredible sponsors, Aerie, who are making the Women in Sport webinar series possible. We are thrilled to have everyone joining us today to learn from our esteemed panelists about pathways to leadership. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items. This webinar offers simultaneous interpretation in 8 languages. You can choose your language using the globe button at the bottom of the screen. Please add any questions you have for the speakers in the chat or Q&A function. I am one of your co-hosts today, Susan Wang. I am an athlete with Special Olympics BC. I have been with Special Olympics for about 13 years, and I currently participate in alpine skiing, swimming, floor hockey, club fit, and track and field. I am really passionate about athlete leadership and bringing a voice for a more inclusive community. I currently sit as a member of the BC Athlete Input Council, the chair of the Canadian Athlete Leadership Council, the athlete representative on the SOC Board of Directors, and just recently was named the Susan Sharon Global Messenger. And before we get to our panelists, I would like to hand it over to my co-host today, Sharon Bollenbach.
Thank you. Hello, Susan. Thrilled to be co-hosting with you today, and welcome to everyone. We're in for a real treat today with a great group of panelists and some really interesting and I think inspiring discussion ahead. A little bit about me. I've worked my entire career in sport, very grateful for that. I've spent some time with Skate Canada, with the Canadian Olympic Committee. I've worked on a FIFA U20 event back in 2007 and had the very amazing privilege and life-changing opportunity to be with Special Olympics Canada for 16 years, where I was the CEO for 10. And now, just a year ago, made the move, and I am the executive director of the FIFA World Cup 2026 here in Toronto. So again, thrilled to be here with all of you. Let's just jump right in and we will start introducing our panel. So our first panelist, I don't believe Daisy has joined us. So we will proceed. Hopefully if we can get Daisy on, she can join in as we have our chat here today. But I will introduce our first panelist, Julia Govinden. Julia is a psychologist and the Chief Executive Officer of United Through Sport, one of the world's largest youth sports all-inclusive organizations. And we're thrilled you could join us today, Julia. She is dedicated to using the powerful platform of sports to ensure no one is left behind. And welcome to you, Julia.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Sharon. Thank you.
And Susan, I'll throw it back to you to introduce the third panelist.
And finally, for our third panelist, we would like to introduce Alia Atkinson. Alia Atkinson is a 5-time Olympic swimmer representing Jamaica in the 2004, 2008, 2012, and 2020 Olympics. Alia attended Texas A&M University, where she became an All-American all 4 years, won numerous medals at the NCAA championships in the 100 and 200-yard breaststroke, and was inducted into the Texas A&M Letterman's Hall of Fame class of 2019. Alia went on to break the world record 4 times in the 50 and 100-meter breaststroke and was named Jamaican Sportswoman of the Year, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Welcome, Alia.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Susan. That was wonderful.
Good morning. As you know, today's theme is Pathways to Leadership. We are going to hear from our panelists today on their leadership journeys. They will share with us lessons learned, support they may have had or wish they have had, and their hopes for the future. We are fortunate to be joined by so many leading women in various parts of the sports sector. But we know the journey isn't always an easy one. I would like to start with a question for my fellow athletes on the panel, Alia and Daisy. Can you share with us a little bit about your sports journey and how it helped you develop leadership skills you use in your life? Alia, we will start with you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Susan. Hello, everybody from all over the world. My sports journey started in Jamaica, where I was born, and that's where I learned how to swim. After college, 5 Olympics, world championships, and world records, I decided to retire from the sport, but not from leadership. Swimming taught me that I had a voice, and it gave me an arena to use it. I was always the youngest on my team during competitions, so I was always looked down upon, and I was never really asked my opinion. As I got older, I realized the importance of not just sharing my opinion, but not waiting for someone to allow me to speak. I was able to talk with many athletes throughout my career and speak to them about my journey and to hear a little bit about theirs. And this helped me to be involved in their lives and to help them in whatever way that I could. It was only after that that I realized that I was already being a leader, not just on my team, but to everyone older and younger than I was. Since I struggled with having a voice when I was younger, I try my best to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. It was one of those reasons that I joined the World Aquatics and the Pan American Athlete Committees, and I can help others find their voice and their direction in sport and after sport as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alia. And I don't think Daisy is here, so we will just skip ahead. So my next question is for my fellow co-host, Sharon, as well as for you, Julia. Both of you have reached C-level leadership positions within sport. What challenges did you face on your way and what supported you? How can sports organizations promote equality and offer leadership opportunities for women? Sharon, we will start with you.
Thanks so much, Susan, and thrilled to talk about this. And I kind of prepared to answer this question from not so much a lens of challenges, but maybe things that I felt served me well in my career and as I moved through various roles. So I've been very fortunate to have a number of different roles in sport. And I always felt passionate about them. And I think that's one of my key messages for today, that you have to have a passion for what you're doing, because when you have a passion, then you're willing to work hard and put the time and effort in to grow and sort of flourish in that environment. So I think that's key. I think a second thing is to be authentic. I think to be aware of your values, your skills, and to be yourself versus trying to fit in also serves you well, because it means you come from a core place of a belief, of your own personal belief system. And I think that exudes into the work that you do, the people you surround yourself with, how you lead with others, whether they're staff on your team or people, stakeholders that you're meeting with externally. That passion, that authenticity comes through, and I think serves you very well as a leader. And then finally, and for me, a third point would be an openness to grow and to learn, and that there's always, you know, as leaders, we have to come from a place of growth and learning. And yes, we have to at some point make the hard decisions and move forward. But understanding and having that sort of constant energy to learn and grow, I think is important as a leader as well. In terms of the sport system, I think, you know, we have a long way to go for gender equity in sport and in sport leadership, but I'm really inspired by some things that I'm seeing. And here in Canada of late, there's been some really positive advancements in sport. And one is the launch of both a pro women's soccer league, a Canadian soccer league, and a professional hockey league. So 2 professional women's hockey league, soccer and hockey leagues that have recently launched and have huge followings. The women's hockey team in Toronto is sold out. Like it's had some amazing response. So I think it's a bit of a call to people that, you know, women's sport is long overdue, and we're here and making great strides. And I think this all starts, it's a bit what Alia spoke to. I think it really starts by getting more girls and women involved in sport and staying in sport. Because they're inspired, they are impacted by sport, as Alia commented, and then want to become leaders. And so I know there's a lot of work here in Canada within the sports system, you know, government funding, corporate funding towards getting young girls and women involved in sport and having them stay in the sports system longer, because those will be the future women leaders in sport. So those were my thoughts that I wanted to share on that question this morning.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And over to you, Julia. What has your experience been like?
So I would have to start by saying, Sharon, when you listed off, you know, passion, authenticity, the openness to grow, I was grinning because I completely agree with you on all points. I would say, you know, Sharon, your explanation in terms of having such a long career, I have not been in sport as long as you have. I would say I've been in the sporting industry less than 10 years. However, I would say that I've grown very, very quickly. And I would say that in general, my approach to being in the industry and kind of building towards what you would say is this position of leadership is that I've never viewed my career as a job. For me, it's not a 9 to 5, it's a part of my life. And that is what inspires me. And it's what makes me happy. And I think that at this stage of my life, I would say knowing who you are, knowing where your strengths are, and also knowing where you've got room to grow is definitely key. I think that sometimes we get so afraid of changing our path, and we think, oh, but we've started on this journey, we've got to stay on it. If it doesn't feel right, there's a reason. And it's really about also listening to that inner voice and understanding if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. And then it's about kind of having the courage to also reassess and say, okay, what should I potentially change in my path and in the direction I'm going? I would say positive, good energy is so key to any situation that you're involved in. I think that when you have that good energy and you have that positive feeling, no matter what you're doing, it also radiates to everyone else. And when you're working with teams, and this is something that I would say I value the most in everything I do, is we can't do everything alone. We can try to, but we'll only get so far. And so when you've got a team of amazing people around you that are supporting you and you're supporting them, you can grow in a much more respectful, kind of comfortable way. So I would say that for me, the team that I work with is much more than a team of colleagues. They really mean much more than that. And I think that in supporting them, you achieve so much more. And building confidence is another one. I think that sometimes we're so afraid, especially as women as well. We want to start something, but we're not sure, and we're overthinking. And sometimes you've just got to throw yourself in and say, what is the worst thing that can happen? What's the worst thing? You won't know unless you try. And often when we try something, actually the outcome is so much better than we ever realized. So I would definitely say that having confidence to believe in yourself, believe you can do it is definitely a big one. And I would say one final point would be paying attention. For me, being a psychologist, it's something you do anyway. I watch every detail, whether it's the people in the room, the event that I'm at, or the person who I'm talking to, and I look for changes. And sometimes we're so focused on our path or our journey, we don't really see what's happening around us. So when we see something shift, we have to be flexible enough to also shift and to be brave enough to change our direction and be adaptable in the moment. So I'd say those are some of the key elements towards building that leadership pathway. But ultimately, I think striving for leadership is maybe not the way I would suggest, but or the approach. I would say strive for what makes you happy, what you're comfortable, happy, and fulfilled doing. The leadership will come along with the experience.
Thank you so much, Julia. I'm going to pass it over to Sharon, who will ask our next questions.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan. And I'm actually going to pass it straight to you. As one of our athletes, I have some questions for you now. As one of our athletes that compete in Special Olympics, I'm curious about, and you have this great new role as a global ambassador, a Sergeant Shriver Global Ambassador. So congratulations on that. Amazing. And so going into this role, and you'll be in that role for the next, I guess, 3 years, 2024 to 2027. What does being a good leader mean to you? And can you maybe share any role models from your leadership journey, and what's made them effective leaders for you? Why have you looked to them as role models? Yeah, Susan, what are your thoughts there?
To me, being a good leader includes being approachable, being kind, having a voice and insight into what really matters to us. A good leader is someone who models the path for younger people to follow and look up to. Growing up, I have always been inspired by the work Malala has completed in Pakistan, advocating for women and girls' education rights. She was awarded the Nobel Prize at age 17, making her the youngest award recipient. I think her activism is truly amazing, and it shows that you can be a leader and create change at any age.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome, Susan. Thank you. I love how you've been inspired, and what inspired you is interesting, right? What captured your attention and your imagination. I think it's really interesting. My next question is actually for Alia and Julia. And Alia, we'll start with you. We know you recently published a book earlier last year, and I love this title. Day One, Not One Day, an athlete's 7-step guide to success. And I love that so much. What attributes do you have that make you a leader? And how did you develop those? What was the environment you had, or the work you did to sort of develop those skills?
Yeah, that's a great question. The work that I've done has been something that's been continually working on from age 4 when I learned to swim all the way till I retired, and now after. I've always loved talking to people and hearing their stories, but being shy, it was really hard for me to have those conversations. As I got older, I became more vulnerable with myself and my challenges in swimming. And I think that's something that athletes don't do enough. We're supposed to be tough. We're supposed to be able to handle situations and then get over that, and then go over the next obstacle and just continually do that. But we never get the chance to sit back and say, how are you doing? How are you going to handle this? And actually talk to somebody and be vulnerable and open with that. After I was able to do that in my sport, I found how easy it was for me to transfer those traits and to work that into being a leader. After I was able to transfer that into speaking. And this allowed me to have conversations with other athletes, hear their stories, and find solutions for their problems, or just be a listening ear, which is sometimes just what we need. With swimming, I learned discipline, time management, strength in difficult situations, optimism. I was able to work and collaborate with so many people and be able to have better communication skills. If the younger version of me was to see me today, she would be shocked. But I learned so much, and that was because of sport. Without sport, I'm not sure if I would have developed the way I am today, or if I would still be that shy and socially awkward girl that I remember. Life with sports has forever changed me, and it has constantly given me opportunities to develop these traits and so much more. One of the things that came from my book, Day One, Not One Day, is I had so much more I wanted to tell the world and to tell athletes, and I never got that opportunity. So that book is written to all athletes and all people who want an athletic mindset, to show what it's like to face doubt and overcome it, to regain that confidence in your life and in yourself, but also to have an athletic mindset, to wake up every day and say, I am ready to give it my best. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to face it. I don't even know if I'm going to succeed, but I'm going to do my best and be my best today, and then try again tomorrow, and then try again the next day. So yeah, I think my traits in sport are immeasurable, and I don't know what my life would be without sport. And I tell children, parents all the time, get your children involved. Get your females and your daughters and young girls involved, because it's such a great community for them to learn and have friends and automatically have that kinship and family that we sometimes lack when we get a little bit older.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, that's so great. And I feel like there's some themes kind of emerging here in what we've talked about so far, in terms of that sort of authenticity, like being true to yourself, being open to learn, and that vulnerability piece that you've just added, Alia, is a key one too. So thank you for sharing that. And congratulations on your book. That's an accomplishment in itself, besides your accomplishments as an athlete and a leader. So congratulations. And now I'll pass it over to Alia, in terms of sort of answering that same question about what attributes do you have that you feel make you a great leader, and how did you develop those? How did that come to be? What was the journey?
I will say as well, thank you and congratulations, Alia, on the book. That really is inspiring. And to be honest with you, it's interesting because for the last few years, I've said to myself, I really want to write, but I haven't gotten to the stage of actually starting. And, you know, we can always find an excuse if there's always something else to do. But really, I admire that you've seen it through, because it's not easy to write a book. So yeah, in response to the question, I actually want to share, I would say, one of the greatest lessons I ever learned in my life, and it's regards to emotions. And I think that in general, when we don't understand our emotions and how they work and how they can support us, sometimes when we're in a certain situation, we'll react in a way, and, you know, given the situation, everybody will react very differently. And if we can learn to understand our emotion to a specific situation and understand why did we react that way, and be able to have control over how we react to any situation in life, it actually means that we become in control of the experience we have of that situation, of the memory that we develop, and how we look back on that event. And when I learned this some years ago, I remember being blown away, because I thought, wow, so life isn't necessarily what happens to me. It's what I take away from the experiences. How do I interpret what is coming and what is around me in the world? And so when I understood this, I started to learn that when I was faced with a challenge, if it was one that was really challenging, instead of being scared and afraid of it, I'd calm myself and I'd take a moment and say, okay, what's actually going on here? This situation is happening. Normally, I might respond with a certain reaction, but when you think about it, you can actually choose your response and your emotion, and that actually changes the whole situation. And I find that, and I think, Ali, you can definitely relate in sport, when you're in a challenging moment, when you get control of how your emotions are reacting in the moment, you can change how you deal with the situation and build strength from it. So I would say that understanding emotions, your own emotions, is so important, because once you understand your pattern of how you react to things and situations and events, you can change them. And that gives you confidence. It kind of builds your awareness of who you are and how you interact with the world. So this for me was a really important lesson in life. I'm still learning as I go along, but I can say that at this point, understanding emotions and how I function, it definitely serves me very well in tense situations or where we tend to get a little bit nervous or anxious. You have a better idea of how to approach these situations, which is really powerful. I would say not accepting no on anything. So if I'm told a no, I'll usually say, okay, how can I change the perspective of this no? Let's say I say, okay, we want to hold an event in a certain place and it seems like it's not quite possible. I say, okay, they're going to tell me no today, but because I'm so determined, I'll start to plan with the team. How are we going to get them to say yes? Who can we reach? So I think having that determined mindset of not just giving in when someone says no is great. And if you're on that pathway towards, you're wanting this leadership position, I'd say asking questions and being inquisitive is something that I started off with myself. I would always ask questions and I would always ask for opportunities. So even if the opportunity wasn't there, and I would constantly work, I would walk into events where it was predominantly a male environment on the administration level. I would ask for the opportunities. And to be honest, I was very impressed that it would be very rare that anyone would say no. So I would always encourage, ask, you've got nothing to lose, get as much experience as possible. And I would also say that having a curiosity, and it goes back to, I think, what we were saying before, when you're doing something you love and you enjoy, you're curious about it. I'm so curious about the sport community and how it's developing in terms of inclusion. And of course, specifically, we're talking about females and women today. How can we all contribute in our way towards having more inclusion within the international sport community? Every single event, meeting, opportunity I get, I'm always trying to advocate and push for women to be given opportunity, because that's really all we need. It's not a case of not having the attributes or not having the capability. It's just being given the opportunity. So I would say also advocating for others and trying to open those doors that are sometimes shut. If one of us can open it for someone else, why not? So I would also say that kindness is a big factor of everyday life, and it's free. So why shouldn't we give it?
Fantastic. Thank you. I really like that. I like that whole notion of, I feel like where we're leading is where it always starts with kind of really being, really understanding yourself and taking time to have that interaction with yourself about where you're at and what you believe and what matters to you. And I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you both for sharing that amazing journeys. I have some questions now, actually, for all of you. So we'll sort of do a round the group with the same question. But what one piece of advice would you give to women and girls aspiring to be leaders? Whether it's in sport or elsewhere, is there kind of one or maybe two items that you or advice that you would give? And Susan, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I guess one piece of advice I would give to women and girls aspiring to be leaders is that there are no limits to your abilities, and you can do anything you set your mind to. There are so many opportunities for all women to have a chance to shine. No matter what life brings, it is important not to give up and to be brave in the face of adversity.
Great. Alia, how about you on that one?
Yes, that was wonderful, Susan. I felt it. For me, I really, really, really love the quote. The only limit we have are the ones we have on ourselves. And for women, we try and do so much and we try and be the best that we can. And sometimes We either get overshadowed or we think that we're not good enough or we're undervalued. It is very important to know your value and know who you are and know what you can bring to the table. Once you have that confidence, nobody can stop you. And there's no door that can close in front of you. As Julia says, just keep on knocking and just keep on knocking. And you eventually find a way. If it's not that door, maybe it's another one. And maybe that's the way you're supposed to go anyway. But I would have to say that confidence and self-value. Find it, know what your worth is, hold on to it, and don't let anybody else tell you otherwise.
All right. And Julia, over to you. What would be sort of words of wisdom or advice you'd give women and girls who want to be leaders?
You know what I would say at this point, and based upon what Susan and Alia have already said, I'd say as well to learn from the best in the field. So if you have an interest in a certain sector, area, sport, whatever it is, find the leaders, find those that are breaking down the doors or they've done it already. How did they do it? I did that myself, and I was very lucky that I managed to get more than one amazing mentor to really guide me on the journey. And when you see how they did it and you understand their mindset, it almost seeps into us. And so I would definitely say find the exceptional, find those that are really doing what you want to do and learn from them, whether that's going on the internet, whether that's listening to the podcast, whether it's reading, whether it's even trying to reach out to them. And I've actually done that in the past with a few really amazing leaders from sport. And surprisingly, you can get some responses back. So go for it. Don't be shy. That's what I would say.
I really like that, Julia. And I was thinking, answering this question, I was thinking the same thing about, when you're a leader, I think it's really important to surround yourself with good mentors, because you need that place to go, to have a conversation, to, ask those questions, to brainstorm, to share an idea and just talk it out loud to someone. And so I really love that notion of finding good mentors and hanging on tight to them, and using them as folks in your corner when you need some support. I'm going to ask another question to our panel, and this one actually came up in the chat, and it was about an example of how you've learned resilience through your sport experience. So maybe, a specific situation where you've had to really learn how to sort of pick yourself up and pull yourself together, and how you've managed that resilience. And Julia, maybe I know you just answered, but maybe I'll start with you on this one, and then I'll go to Alia and then Susan. Absolutely.
Actually, the minute you asked the question, I had a specific incident that came in my head, so it still must be fresh somewhere in there. But actually, a situation for me that's happened more than once was having colleagues in the sport administration that actually were a little bit threatened by how quickly I was progressing within sport administration and how they couldn't really understand it. And they felt, I guess you could say, entitled to the position because they had maybe more years of experience, or they were sort of better networked at that moment in time. And I remember in the initial feeling, and as I said, when we go back to emotions, is, oh gosh, panic. What's going to happen? Am I going to keep my place or not? Am I going to be pushed out? The second part, once you breathe in a few times and you think about it, I actually decided to confront these situations. And when you do that and you take the decision to not just let it happen to you, but actually engage and face it and have a discussion, you really see how things change. And I would say that it gives you a bit of a tougher skin because, to be honest, in this industry, it's not easy. And you've really got to learn your place, and you've got to kind of learn and build the respect from the community. And so I would say that not being afraid to face and address a challenge, an issue, a problem is really important. So that is one instance where I would say, when I had this discussion, and it happened on more than one occasion, it gets resolved, and actually you move on and quite comfortably. And it's always good that, I think, in general, for us to not be afraid to confront any challenge. So for me, that definitely built resilience, and pretty quick too.
Fantastic. Wow. That's a great example. Thank you for sharing that. Aaliyah, how about you? What do you,
Yeah.
how about overcoming or having that sense of resilience for you? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's really tough, Julia, because resilience is that in itself, overcoming that obstacle, facing it head on and keep on going and keep on going. I've been in the sport for 26 years. So there's been a lot of ups and downs. And I think perseverance has been my hardest fight, just how to continue, when to retire, when to give up on a goal or a dream, and when to say that it's not going to happen. But for me, one specific example, in 2015, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease. And so that is an autoimmune deficiency. And it really throws a loop for an athlete, because it gives you have increased weight, you have low moods of excitement, your levels are just extremely dropped. And when you're going into a competition, you want to feel like your fast twitch muscles are ready. You want to feel like you're ready to go. And everything that is inside you and outside you is just saying, no, be slow, be like a sloth. And so it was a really big battle between when to compete, how to train. Every day it felt like I was a whale. I was just a big whale just moving through the water. I had no speed whatsoever. And I feel like, especially with girls, as we reach between 15 to 18, our bodies start to fluctuate a lot. And it's that mental battle between having that self-worth and that value and that confidence and knowing who you are, no matter how your body's feeling right now, the stages that you're in, no matter where your headspace is right now, knowing your goal and fighting through it, no matter the obstacles that is there with your head and your body, is really challenging. And for coaches to understand that the females are going through something right here, to have a little bit more compassion and understanding and to help them through it, not fight them with it, I think is huge. So for me, my coach was that for me. He was able to understand what was going on with me and saying, okay, we're going to shorten the practice today because you're not recovering like you used to. And so he was able to go through this journey with me to allow me to reach my 5th Olympics. I was still intact. I wasn't where I used to be, but I was able to say I saw my dream to fruition. It wasn't my goal because I did not medal, but I was able to finish at least my goals of going to 5 Olympics. And I think that's what you look back on when you have your life. Like what Julia was saying, you look back and you say life is what happens, but no, I look back on it and say, no, I did my goal. I had my 5 Olympics. I enjoyed my journey. So I can look back with it with peace and contentment and admiration for everything that I've done. So I think that's resilience. When you look back on it, you can say, I did my best and I've achieved what I wanted to achieve, even if it's just the effort.
Oh my gosh, Aaliyah, that's incredible. I think it's such personal awareness on your part, both of what you needed in that time when you were, full on in training and working so hard, but also how honest you've been with yourself in the reflection of that too, and congratulating yourself and embracing what you've achieved and recognizing that, right? And not being afraid to sort of recognize it and call it out for yourself. And congratulations, what an amazing career. Susan, I'm going to throw that question to you about resilience.
I really love how you both talked about overcoming challenges and being brave. And I think it's so important to just have fun with your journey. You don't have to compare yourself to others and compete. You could just go for your personal best and be the best you can be. I think for me, growing up, my balance was super bad, and I was also always told no, that I cannot do stuff, and I compete in alpine skiing and we need balance for that. And so it just, I have always fallen but gotten back up. And it's so important to, when something doesn't work out, you keep trying your best. And that's the best we can hope for. My coach once said, how can my balance be so bad when my skiing is so good? And it just shows you that you can do anything you set your mind to, no matter the circumstances. You can keep trying and keep going as a result. And as a result of me keep trying my best in alpine skiing, I went to the World Games in Australia in 2017, where I won a bronze medal. And that was a special memory that I have always had. And so now I just keep trying my best and keep going for my personal best.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Susan. I love that. And I love the quote from your coach. How can you have how can you be such a great skier when your balance is not as great? And good for you for persevering and working through that. One more quick question that I'll throw out to each of you as well. And this one relates to a bit of you know, we've talked we've talked mostly about our own leadership journeys and what we have done and what's been important to us, what has served us well as leaders, and how we've been sort of, it's the importance of being so self-aware about what you need as a woman, as a leader. I want to talk now a little bit about when you're in this role, sort of that position that you have to be a mentor to others. We talked about the importance of mentors to us, but you know, as you are all leaders, how do you manage that piece about being a mentor to others, and how important is that to you when women and girls are looking up to you for mentorship? And Alia, maybe I'll start with you on this one.
Yes, thank you, Sharon. It has been a phenomenal journey. I've been able to have conversations and be in the room with all the directors or people who make sport what it is through marketing and technical officials and committees. But to be able to be in that room and talk directly what is happening to the athletes. Being on the athletic committee for Pan Americans and for World Aquatics, I'm able to hear what's going on, not just in my little region, but across the world, hear what's going on with women in the African continents and in the Pacific Islands and in Europe and Australia and the US and all over the world, and be able to bring that to the forefront of the people who are making decisions and say, this is what our athletes are saying. This is what they need. And going back to how I previously started this conversation, this webinar, I was extremely shy. And so to see my entire circle and have that foresight to know that the communication skills that I needed throughout life, throughout sport, has led me to this is phenomenal. But the second part of that, I have had so many great conversations with athletes that felt comfortable with me and allowed me to be approachable to the point where I can go up to them and have a normal conversation. It's to the point where they see me as a friend, I hope. But it's a nice conversation to have, because I didn't think while I was swimming I could do that, because I was always very centered, very focused. People were afraid to come up to me and talk during competition. But now on the other side, I'm walking around the pool deck, I'm always there, people can see me, and it was such an easier conversation to have. So being on a leadership role has been eye-opening to the fact of how many things happen on a pool deck, how many things happen in sport. And there's no real place for athletes to go and talk to about it. There's no real communication sometimes, either with their teammates or their coaches or team managers on site. They need somebody else. So to be that for them, to be that liaison to the organization committee, to be that emotional attachment that they need just to get over this hurdle that's going on, has truly been fantastic. And I think representation is always needed, especially in your country. There's representation on the athlete committees. They're looking for people with a voice. And there are many women, especially here today, that are present, that could be that voice for somebody else. So I definitely challenge you to reach out and look at your organizations and see where your role can be. And if it's not there, then maybe create one. Maybe you see something that is not there and you could be the one to fill that spot.
Love it. Throwing out the challenge, Alia. Love it. That's great. And I like what you said about, I always felt, you know, that there's no one who can appreciate the journey, you know, more than the people who are on the same journey, right? So that athlete to athlete kind of connection to really appreciate the work, the effort, the ups, the downs. I think that sharing is just, I've always felt that's so important because no one sort of understands the journey more than someone who's on a similar path. Susan, I'm going to go to you now. And I know that many of our Special Olympics athletes look up to you as a leader and a mentor. And I'm wondering how you feel about that role and how that's important to you.
It feels really surreal to be that leader and to have a voice. Growing up, I was also really shy and I didn't have much of a voice. Because even though I have been in Canada for about 24 years, I still have a really strong Chinese accent, and people have made hurtful remarks regarding my voice. So for such a long time, I didn't have a voice and I kept quiet. I was hiding my voice, but now I'm trying to embrace my voice and to keep shining and to be that role model for other athletes and be that voice for them. So I think it's really important to just keep going, no matter what people say. Just keep being you and keep having a voice that shines.
Susan, that is amazing. That is amazing. And I think you've really, you know, there definitely is a theme here today about being yourself, right? And really taking the time. I think, Julia, you mentioned it, like paying attention. And that's not only to just those around us, but paying attention to ourselves and who we are and what we need and you know, what drives us and has us going forward. So Julia, I'll let you quickly answer this question about being a mentor and what that means. You talked about having good mentors in your life, but now sort of flipping the table and you as a mentor and how important that is to you.
Yeah, I would say as well, I think in the end, when we're ourselves, it's the best we can be. And I would say that flipping the coin over and becoming a mentor, I never planned to be a mentor. But then I started to have a lot of our young leaders who we're sort of, I say that we're raising the next generation of young leaders. So they're usually athletes, they're linked to a federation, some have disabilities, some do not. And they started to message me and quite directly and ask for advice, or they would share an experience that was happening. And so it wasn't something I necessarily looked for, but it came in my direction. And I thought, wow, they're coming to me for a reason. They must think I know something more than they do, and that perhaps I might have some answers. And the way I've always approached that is I only say my own truth. I only speak from my experiences to the best that I can. And if I don't know something, I'll say I don't know. I won't try to find a nice you know, response to give them just to kind of give them an answer. I'll be as honest as I can. I'm so honored every time I'm asked to be someone's mentor. It still shocks me, to be honest, each time that I get asked. And it's quite emotional in a way, because you realize that someone is trusting you with intimate parts of themselves and how they feel and what they think and what's going on in their life. But on the other hand, you know, with age and experiences comes wisdom. We learn a lot along the way, as we've heard here today in Alia. Susan, you definitely said from your experiences how you've learned so much along the way. And I think to start with, for anyone who's looking to be a mentor specifically, ask yourself, why do you want to be a mentor? Number one. Secondly, I would say just offer support. If that's the direction you want to go, offer support, whether it's in kindness, whether it's someone on your team that you feel is struggling, or someone, you know, who you know. Practice mentorship. I think it's something that evolves over time. I don't think anyone is born just with all the answers and how to be a fantastic mentor, but offer the support, have the discussions, speak your own truth in any given situation, and yeah, I would say enjoy it, and enjoy sharing that relationship with people, because that's what life is for us at the end of the day. It's relationships with others, and that's what brings us joy. So yeah, to everybody, and if I have any of my athletes on here who are watching, I'm very proud of you all. I'll say that. Very proud. Thank you.
I like that. I love all your answers, and you know, I'll just quickly share a little quote that's a favorite of mine, and it speaks to Julia, your comment about being supportive and open. And you know, one of a quote that I really like is, "Be the woman who fixes another woman's crown without telling the world it was crooked." And I really love that, and I think it's so important. I feel like you know, we all need to be in this together, and supporting each other, and this is a great example of that. So I'm going to pass it over to Susan, but before I just want to applaud Special Olympics for pulling this webinar series together. Amazing. And all of our panelists today. It was thrilling to co-host with Susan. And here I have my thing for you. Sorry. Susan, great to co-host with you. And it was an absolute pleasure for me to be surrounded by the Special Olympics family again. So happy to be back and having this informative, inspiring conversation. Huge thanks. And Susan, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. It was amazing and a privilege to be the co-host with you as well. We are so happy you were back. We would like to firstly extend a huge thank you to all our panelists who joined us today and shared their insights. I know I was inspired from all your responses and certainly learned some things I can continue in my leadership journey. Here in Special Olympics, we know that our coaches play an important role in welcoming new athletes. If you want to learn more about coaching, please check out our coaching courses on the SO Online Learning Portal. The link to the online learning portal is in the chat. The Special Olympics website also has a lot of material about sport and coaching, and the link is also in the chat. Be sure to keep checking our YouTube channel. We will post all webinar recordings there, so you can watch them back or share them with your friends. Thank you to all in the audience who joined us today and were engaging with us in the chats and Q&A. Lastly, this wouldn't have been made possible without our partner in Aerie for their support of our first ever Women in Sport webinar series. Have a great Friday and weekend, everyone.